Alright, introduction to petroleum fuel facilities, marine fueling facilities function, fuel piers, waivers, berthing piers, offshore moorings, general requirements, general layout, piping system, equipment description, product recovery system, weather sheds, canopies, special calculations, safety showers and eye wash fountains, traffic bollards, special drains for fueling piers, special drains for fueling piers, ballast treatment and sludge removal system. Part 1 Function. Design marine fuel receiving and dispensing facilities for the purpose of the receiving the fuel and loading fuel aboard ships, barges, boats for consumption as cargo. In many cases, the marine receiving and dispensing facilities will be combined. 2. Fuel piers waivers. When required, approved owner design fuel piers and dispensing for dispensing and receiving fuel. Ensure that the size of the facility compatible with the fuel requirements active at the time of the simultaneously loading offloading is to be accommodated for dispensing fuel. Consider the number type of the size of the vessel to be fueled with loaded to provide with the required number of location fuel outlets. In most cases, use detected dedicated fuel piers waivers for fuel receipt include design an energy absorption fender system. 3. Berthing piers. In some cases, permanent fuel piping equipment may be installed with the berthing piers were not primarily designed for the handling fuel. These facilities are normally used only for the dispensing fuel to serve the commons with the consumption or operational requirements usually dictate a clearing berthing pier surface area. These impose restrictions on the using of loading arms and above deck piping. For these areas, trench coated piping may be considered prior to designing facility on berthing piers for receiving and dispensing bulk fuel for the transport review plans with appropriate port operation agency. 4. Your offshore moorings. When operations are active do not warrant construction of fuel piers, provide offshore moorings of the vessel that discharge receiving the fuel from the underwater pipelines connecting the shore facility. Clearly mark the mooring so the vessel, when moored, will be proper position to pick up and connect the underwater connection. 5. General requirements. Do not start with the design of any fuel system without first becoming completely familiar with the guidance of spill prevention, air quality control, and other environmental safety fire protection issues. 6. General layout. Provided a pier loading offloading connection with a blind flange ball valve with the throttle isolating with the pier edge for each of the product to be transported. The intent of the loading arm manifold will separate with the manual installation plug valve with each of the product connection. This will allow the simultaneous loading offloading with the different products, each with a thoroughly dedicated arm. Provide a double block and bleed plug at the point at which the line is being stripped using following criteria. Provide each branch with the pier edge manual isolation valve located at the main line. Provide the thermal relief valves around the isolation check valve to receive the excessive pressure caused by thermal expansion liquid trap between shutoff points. See Figure 1. Do not provide a gauge outboard with a hose connection shutoff valve because the hose connection will indicate the presence of the absence of the pressure in the hose. If required, provide one or more loading arms at each station. Provide a liquid-filled gas pressure gauge for a loading arm located to be easily read from the operator's position. The gauge is provided with a dry brake check valve at the end of the loading arm of the rigid piping will not initially indicate the presence of the absence of the pressure of the loading arm. Provide venting and drainage branch lines, loading arms, manifold. Provide the manual venting line with the branch line. Connect the vents on the oil waste line, similar with the sanitary vent and sanitary view system. To avoid slipping, the pier drainage lines cannot be sloped back with the pier head. The stripping pumps of the design include separate oil waste for the drain lines, holding tank dedicated to stripping pump. This valuable alternative provide segregated handling multiple products with loading arms while allowing easy selection of the products to be transported. Double block and bleed valves can be used for this application. Provide a separate pipe connection for the ballast water with the off spec with the fuel inside the facility level and activity warrants it. Provide each hose and handling loading arm with a fixed spill contaminant as defined in Title 33 CFR Part 154. Provide a hydraulic shock surge suppressor if required. R7, your piping system, piping arrangement, complete with the following criteria. When the simultaneously looked over the same with the wheel may be made with more than one vessel size, fuel headers, related equipment, total flow rates, all vessels discharged into the headers. Ensure flow rates are in accordance with the requirements. Place pier above the pier deck with contaminated air with the fuel pier with the trends of the pier. Berthing piers, slope pier tour of the shore to permanent stripping. Use gratings as required to allow access across the pipe. Provide flexibility with the piping. between the pier and the shore, allow with a small movement of the pier relatively to the shore. Use suitable pipe in, offset the configuration, preferably a horizontal plane. This will allow three-dimensional movement. And vertical planes are used to install vents and drains, provide flexibility piping along with the pier to allow growth due to thermal expansion and horizontal expansion loops are performed in some cases with the space of the provide with the vertical expansion loops below the expansion joints where necessary. Where practical, provide vertical expansion loops and with vents and drains. Include the pier facility with the pier manifolds for each fuel type, the range with the parallel to the face of the pier. Pipe hangers are not allowed. 8. Equipment description, loading and offloading loading arms. Provided with articulated marine loading arms for the receiver the ship the fuel cargo is connected with a vessel with more than 15 feet, forward 15 feet AFT, and 10 feet of the face of the pier with the vertically with the collar with the loading of the vessel with the tidal changes without damaging the arm. Provide hydraulic power, assist the system for operating loading arms larger than 8 inches nominal size. Equip the end of the loader with to be connected with the ship's manifold, including section and standard ANSI forged steel flange, quick coupling device, manually hydraulic operated. Consider the breakaway and coupler's location with a strong current. A2 fuel hose. Loading offloading arms are a preferred method to be used, provided facility strong with a protecting hose is necessary practical to pier if the hose is provided with lieu of loading offloading arm. Submarine fuel hoses. Provided with a submarine fuel hose with offshore moorings, used with a heavy-duty smooth bore oil, gasoline, marine cargo discharge hose rated with a working pressure not less than 225 psi gauge. Built-in nipples, classes of 300 flanges with stainless steel bolts, model nuts, and hoses should be used as Coast Guard certified. 8.4 meters. Provide turbine pods with a displacement meter with each with a dispensing outlet with a might be used simultaneously with the approval of the owner. Use portable meters where fuel operations are intermittent. Also consider the use of alternative technologies such as ultrasonic meters require temperature compensation features at each of the meter used in the custody transfer. Alright, meter positive displacement. Require flange connected cast steel with a boil positive displacement meter with a desired pressure flow rating for applicable service requirements. Each of the meter with the gas drain with a register with a provided 1 meter with temperature compensation adjustable calibration 1. There is a custody transfer. Sure meter and accessories are a capability either the mechanical electrical support. Equipment selected provide accuracy with a plus or minus of 0.5%. When used for the custody transfer, consult with the owner with requirements of the meter to communicate with a remote location with equipment considered with you for the card-operated, key-operated data acquisition system. Cards and keys are associated with the code identified with the receiver of the fuels allowed with the access of the fuel. Quantities taken and transmitted with the data received with the device with the electronic pulse transmitter mounted on each meter. Each transaction is automatically recorded. Meters turbine. Using flange connected with the steam body with the turbines of the desired pressure flow rating applicable service requirement to provide with the fuel flow strainer before the turbine meter with the provided straight length of the pipe to minimum with a 10 pipe diameter upstream with the 5 pipe diameters downstream. All turbine meters are as required with the manufacturer. Ensure that the meter has the drain and register with the provide with the meter with the compensation adjustable calibration when there is custody transfer. Ensure all supporting equipment with the meter is capable of the turbine meter with the provide accuracy with a plus or minus 0.5% when used in custody transfer. Solve the owner requirements for the meter to communicate with a remote location or equipment. Consider use of the card operated, key operated data acquisition card and keys operate are coded to identify with the receiver of the fuel with allow access to fuel quantities taken and transmitted with the data. Receiving the device of electronic pulse transmitter mounted on each meter. Each transaction is automatically recorded. 8.5 strainers. Require a basket strainer with a protect with the central fecal pumps and left with the includes the meeting with a net positive suction head of the pump, whether or not the strainers are installed with the suction side with the central fecal pumps. Install spool pieces so that the temporary strainers can be installed during startup of the system. Strainers are required on the suction side of all pumps or meter with recipient filterization strainers are not required. Upstream, the issue filter separated diaphragm control valves. Also use flange basket strainers constructed steel fitted with a removed basket of fine monometal stainless steel mesh with large mesh reinforcements. Unless otherwise specified, provide fine screen mesh as follows. And then it shows pump suctions, positive central fecal positive displacement, receipt filterization, inlet unless downstream filter separator. And your message 70 and 40 at 0.18 of an inch. On pump suction, the rest are 0.116 of an inch. In all cases, ensure the effective screen is not less than 3 times the cross-sectional area of the pipe strainer upstream. They should be quick open and single screw. Pipe pressure gauge on both strainer of the different type of the gauge of the cross strainer. Alright, surge suppressors. Every effort should be made with the control of the hydraulic surface of the track, except for the limit of the design of the piping system rather than the use of the surge protectors, surge suppressors. When not possible to become with the test, extremely important surge suppressor that may be incorporated with the diaphragm bladder type equipped with top-mounted liquid-filled pressure gauge with order check valve at the bottom of the drain above the check valve, isolating valve, the needle valve around the check valve to permit and control black bleed over the surge suppressor without rebounding. Locate surge suppressor close as possible to the point and shut off as expected to cause shock. Surge suppressor can reduce shock pressure but will not eliminate the entirely provide solution with hydrostatic conservative piping design. Use loops and slow closing valves. Surge suppressors are strictly the last resort solution. Require approval of the owner prior to designing it into the system. Valves. Materials of construction require valves with carbon steel body with the bonds. Do not allow valves with aluminum, cast iron, bronze material. Use API, fire safety valves, isolation valves, double block and bleed isolation valves. Use these separation products over the tank shell connection wherever the piping goes to the above and below ground pier over the tank storage or other location critical to pressure testing of piping. Plug valves, your double block and bleed, double seated with the tapered lift to the lock over the plug type valve with the body bleed between the seats of the double block and bleed in the critical applications such as separation and product services. When piping goes above and below ground pipe between pier tank storage, other locations critical to pressure testing pipe. Furniture will be designed so that the synthetic seat material is burned out in a fire. Metal to metal seat will remain to effect closure. Comply with the API standard 607. Lubricated plug valves are not allowed, included in integral body cavity thermal relief valve. Ball valves, double block and bleed. Use double-seated tritium mounted lockable ball type valve. Blood body bleed between seat with double block and bleed. This will very, very rarely use except with it as an alternative double block and bleed plug. An application where the valve is operated with infrequently example of the isolation valve in the middle of the piers are only closed to perform pressure testing of the piping. Valves should be designed so the synthetic seating of the material is burned out of the fire. Metal to metal seat remain effective with the closure. Comply with the API standard 607 intended to include integral body with a cavity thermal relief valve. Gate valves, double block and bleed, double seated lockable gate type with the valve with the body bleed between the seats of the double block and bleed. These will very rarely use when acceptable alternative double block and bleed plug valve with double block and bleed ball valves. Only when other double block and bleed valves will not physically fit with the valve that should be designed so that the synthetic seating of this burned out in the fire metal to metal seat will remain in effective closure. Comply with the API standard 607. Single seated gate valves are not allowed, including integral body cavity thermal relief valve. Quick opening, frequent opening isolation valves. Use these less critical with the double block and bleed shut off is not required. Ball valves. Ball types valves may be used with the valves quick and the frequent opening application for the double block and V valve is not required. Ball valves should be designed with a synthetic seating material with a burned out and a fire with a metal to metal seat will remain effective with closure. Comply with the API standard 607 and use the Teflon Viton synthetic seal seating material using full port ball valves exact same diameter on the pipe within 10 diameters of the upstream and or 5 diameters downstream with a flow pressure control valve flow sensing device. This is a venturi valve shall comply with the API standard 608. Butterfly valves are not allowed. Use full port valves examined same diameter of the pipe when pigging is required. Alright, your isolation valve operator provide manually operated valve is not specified with a remote automatic emergency operation. Use the gear operator with a ball, double block and bleed plug valves larger than 6 inches. Double block and bleed gate ball and double block and bleed valves specified with a remote automatic emergency service that have electrical motor operators. If operated by the owner, provide locking tab isolation valve that allow the padlock to be used to lock out during the maintenance. Provide chain operators on valve which are located 72 inches high above the ground grade. Isolation valve location. Provide isolation valve on each of the line of the short end for piping used only for the receiving the fuel. Provide with the check valve at the short end. Use a double block and bleed type whenever the motor operated with the remote control to minimize surge potential of using slow closing speed. If possible, provide double block and bleed isolation valve on the above ground piping at each board tank off loading and loading connection. Provide double block isolation valves near the shoreline submerged pipeline offshore moorings. Provide double block and bleed isolation valves, inlet outlet connection, each line strain and filter, separator, meter, diaphragm control valve, other equipment requires periodic stripping on the and one inlet, one outlet valve with maybe even to isolate more than one piece of adjacent equipment with connected in series. Provide a thermal relief valve around all isolation check valve to receive the excessive pressure. Cause the thermal expansion liquid trap between shutoff points, figure 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Alright, isolation valve pits provide fiberglass concrete pits with a rolling hinge covering design according to the DoD standard AW782428 for isolation valves installed with a non-traffic area with the underground falling fuel system. The design valve pits valve operators so the valves can be operated by a person without confined space entry. Other valves, or check valve. Use check valves to prevent backflow through the pumps. Breach branch line with the meters of the location where the run back for reverse flow must be avoided. Check with the valve that may be to use the swing disc globe, dual plate hang disc, the spring loaded pop at the bulb with the diaphragm actuated type. Use checks and soft seat with the non-slamming type of the renewable seat decks and seats and disc. Ensure check valves conform with the API spec 6D. Use non-surge check valve with the diaphragm control valve with the flow feature with the discharge valve with the pump. When using non-surge check valve with the control of the valve with the pump discharge with the using spring type with a water check before diaphragm control valve with the present side of the flow with a reversal during shutdown with the passing back through the pump before diaphragm control valve diaphragm chamber is filled with the reacts with closing valve. Thermal relief valve provide thermal relief valves around isolation check valves that relieve the excessive pressure caused by thermal expansion liquid trap between shuttle points, see figure 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pressure vacuum gauge. Use glycerine filled with a silicone filled with the pressure gauge with a range dial side with the necessary not more or less than 0 to 160 psi gauge pressure range, 4 inch in diameter as a dial. Also use pressure gauge upstream and downstream with a filter separator with a different pressure with a maybe even little gauge. On each side install compound pressure vacuum gauges on the suction side, each pump with a fuel storage. Provide lever handle with a gauge cock pressure snubber and each pressure gauge connection. Provide pressure gauge on each side of the pipeline shot valve with the short end with either the pier mounted pipeline provided with the indicated point with a higher pressure reading telltale indicator 2 with the reporting of the high pressure experience since the last to reset. Provide for the non-contact resetting of the telltale with the means of a small magnet. Provide a pressure gauge on each branch line, each fueling station, on each of the pier-mounted pipeline. Ensure the pressure gauge is legibly for the fuel hose connection array from the fan and graph of the loading arm location is provided. Provide pressure gauge at each of the marine loading assembly. If provided, ensure the gauge is visible by the operator. Pressure gauges should be installed so that they are testable without removing the pump pipeline stripper pump. With the most displacement, the stripper pump with the emptying with load arm hoses, manifold, provide stripper pump to reclaim each clean product with each of the main product line. Near the product lines of the oil waste drain line conduct an economic analysis to alternative to determine an appropriate choice of larger, longer, more frequent drain lines for favor the stripper pump choice. Use stripper pump with the multiple product lines, but do not exceed acceptable limit of cross-contamination. Provide the dedicated stripper pump to each separate product for lines for such as aviation turbine fuels. Excess flow sensors. In piping, use the both loading and offloading to provide sensor for the alarm with the bolt of the control room and ampere to detect excessive flow with the microscope of the vent of the line breakers. Solid cyclonic separators. In facilities where reported with the tanker barges, conserve the solid separator of the receiving lines from filterization. Remove the gross impurity with the incoming product. The inside system equipment of filter separators, receiving lines, local strain siliconic separators upstream of the filter and separator. Ensure that there is no slug valve feature on the filter separator. Consider the use of the automatic water drains. Do not allow reverse flow through these siliconic separators. Grounding system. Provide ground system for the barges. Art 9. Product recovery system. Provide product recovery system to collect, storage, usable aviation turbine fuel whether otherwise will become waste from operational maintenance activities. Consider the product recovery system for other products. 10. Weather sheds. Provide adequate shelter for the personnel as well as the split contaminant, booms, absorbent material, other weather-sensitive equipment. 11. Canopies. Provide canopy directly with the owner for all above-ground equipment, pumps, meters, strainers, filters, control panels, electrical panels, motor control centers. Special calculations. Calculation pipeline filling vent line with draining stripping times. Larger and longer pipeline, greater the volume of the fuel required to fill the line, and therefore greater the volume of the air required to be vented. Undersized vent lines, delaying filling of the line, the delay charge, and changeover product with the multi-line product. Since the vent lines allow filling of the line not more than 4 times design transit time over the line. Moving the vent to the drain line to avoid spills of the environment. Check the vent line air velocity that you must not exceed the allowable air velocity to the electrostatic buildup. In accordance with the API recommended practice 2003, vent valve must not be less than the lowest allowable pump rating from ship or shore. Vent rate must be less. Design transit velocity to minimize hydraulic shock. Alright, 13. Safety showers and eye wash fountains. Provide manual shut-off valve with a portable wet water branch. Safety shower eye wash fountain. Provide means of safety. Seal shut-off valve with the open position. Ensure the operation in emergency. It allows servicing shower without shutting off the portable water and whole pier with design freezing protection and climates. Subject to freezing, install safety showers, eye wash fountain fountains in accordance with ISEA Z358.1. Alright, your traffic bollards. Provide traffic bollards to protect fuel piping. Equipment appears in way for the use of the concrete filled steel pipe, minimum 4-inch diameter, 4 foot in height, embodying concrete welded to a steel plate mounted on the structure. Alright, 15. Special drainage for fueling piers. Provide an intercepting system with a collect oil spill with a replacing pipe with a pier with a curve with a contaminant with a drain system independent with a drain deck drain. Provide with contaminated with also with loading arm and the risers. Provide locking valve with normally closed with the position contaminated areas along with the sump pump with the other means of the removing the spilled fuel with the collection point of the tank. In case of stormwater collected with the intercepting system contaminated with the water fuel mixture should be treated as an oil spill described previously. R16, ballast treatment and sludge removal. Ballast receiving the treatment facility with a design. It is often policy should no discharge of hazardous substance into navigable waters in the United States adjoining shores into and onto upon waters of the contingent zone. Petroleum fuel facilities transfer fuel, barge tanker fuel, large ships require ballast water collection treatment facilities receive from oil ballast from cargo and fuel tanks also. Blended fuel has been reclaimed with the ballast water during the collection and treatment process with the boiler fuel with a shorter side boiler. Perform quality assurance check with the reclaimed oil with the ensure the meet with the minimum requirements of shore side boiler fuel. Supposed sludge accumulated during the collection and treatment of the ballast water in accordance with the applicable hazard waste management and disposal procedures. Select and design appropriate treatment system based on evaluation types of oil mixture, oil-water mixture for the encounter with a particular facility. If possible, base the evaluation samples on the type of the ballast water grade, receipt and tank for washing, include the following. Whether simple mixtures or the simple gravity suspension, chemically stable emulsions, space of gravity, viscosity of the oil mixture, whether the other substances such as chemical, bacteria, and mixtures must be removed. General conditions, ship tanks expected to be discharged, new, clean, coated, maintained, dirty, normal fuel, sludge, gallon, rust, whether ballast water, clean salt water, poor or polluted harbor water, where the treatment system proposed treatment waste over the offload barge fixture or base facility meet the standards of fluent with water quality established local environmental regulations. It is determined that both simple mixture emulsions are present. Consider the possibility of two segregated separate systems, one for gravity separation and the other breaking emulsions. Avoid mixing two types of suspensions when possible. Receiving settling tanks. The minimum ballast water received in the facility using requires two storage, usually equal capacity to be used with alternate receiving the settling tanks. If these tanks are sized to allow 4 to 5 days distribution, settlement, separation, simple suspension, light oils with water can be achieved. Provide following filling and improvements. Automatic float gauge used suitable for the transmitting device with a remote readout. B. One cable operated swing line assembly with a one oil outlet pipe. C. One shell fill nozzle. D. A valve sample connection in shell having no freezing type valves, cold climates every 2 feet, vertically, easily accessible from ladder storeway. When cleaning chemical needed with the provide with a chemical inline valve to be non-freezing type of the cold climates. When air provided with a perforated pipe or sparge with the mixing with the making the perforation side of the pipe to avoid plugging, settling solids. Use non-freezing type air inlet valve in the cold climate. Solid glass lock-in box oil outlet line. Second glass lockbox water outlet line. Oil sump tank high level alarm. Water oil jumps. Water and oil pumps require to move the fluids from the receiving tank from oil sump tank. Transfer oil water or use low speed type of the tank pumps to minimize emulsification. If heaters are required to reduce oil velocity, promote separation, use the tank of the wall. Heaters with the internal pipe to keep the internal pipes at least 2 feet above the tank floor. Installation of tanks will be regularly heated and provide automatic temperature control with the thermometers for all heated tanks. Alright, for 16.1.3 oil water separator, separate the water fuel mixture storage settling tanks with an API oil water separator. Receive the fuel portion, pass the water portion out of the treatment process. Do not discharge the water drain from the tanks to the surface of water without additional treatment and permits. Alright, 17, sludge removal systems. Design requirement. Install sludge removal system where the accumulation of sludge substantial qualities of the like occur with a regular basis. Accordingly, each sludge ballast waste treatment system contaminated fuel recovery system free, cleaning the shore and ship tanks. The routine cleaning of the clean product storage tank occurs on a regular basis. Sludge removal systems are not required. Sludge disposal. When possible, provide pumps and tanks piping the return sludge containing recovery oil with a contaminated oil recovery system. This is not possible. Consider transferring the sludge to a refinery waste oil treatment facility. Provide a tank of the tank with a transfer pump and pumpable sludge that are unclaimable, including piping the receiving sludge, mixing the low viscosity waste oil for thinning as required. Ensure the tanks are dike enclosed to have cone bottoms. Provide tank heating with the climate conditions approved if necessary. Current sludge disposal with the method designed with the facility environmental office. Close the sludge disposal facility with a security fence and to prevent unauthorized entry. Not use the facility to dispose sand and gravel, grass, scale, other solid, non-bombable matter found on tank bottoms. And then it shows their integral thermal relief piping valve system and a conventional thermal piping valve system filled with it. Well, and then an equipment pump house and pads. Tank truck refueling equipment racks. Storage tank thermal relief piping system. And then a final exam. And this was a reading of the Introduction to Petroleum Fuel Facility, Marine Fuel Facilities.